Okay, today I am so excited to introduce our featured lab manager, who is a two-time guest. He's in the leaderboard for repeat guests at the Data Science Lab, Emil Hvitfeldt. Thank you so much for being here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you for having me. So I'm Emil Hvitfeldt. I'm on the tidy models team, trying to make modeling better. And in my spare time, I do a little bit of slide work with Quarto, which is
Oh,
what we'll be talking about today.
it's it's his secret passion. We're going to talk all about that today. I'm also joined by Isabella Velasquez. She is here. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.
All right, I say let's go ahead and get started. So, Emil, today we are going to be talking about slide crafting in Quarto. And slide crafting, I feel like, is a word that you use a lot. I like it. What we're really talking about is the output format of Reveal.js and all of the magical extensions that you have been working on over the years, including very recently, to make slides better. Would you like to share your screen and give us a little bit of a primer before
Yes.
we dig in? Okay, awesome.
Moving everything away. All right, all the way away. All right. So everything we'll be doing today is Quarto related. So it's how you would expect everything to be. So you do Quarto and you put a format, but we're doing slide drafting or making slides, presentations. And the main difference here is we're setting a different format. So here, there's an example of where we create a HTML page and also made PDFs in different ways. But by setting this format to Reveal.js, we are getting something that looks like this. So now everything is in a non-scrollable format, and we can advance and see slides how you would expect slides to be in a presentation format. And you can do most everything you can do in a normal Quarto document. So we have whole chunk highlighting, little animation, highlighting. You can basically do everything you expect and a couple of things that are specific to slides. Let's see some. Okay. So one of the things which we'll get to later is normally you press the arrows to advance to the next slide. But sometimes you also want something to happen within the slide itself. And that's in Reveal.js terminology called a fragment. So you have your whole slide, but you're turning it into fragments. So an easy way of this is just the idea of an incremental list. So here we are not actually creating 3 or 4 different slides, each with one more element. They're all happening on the same page. But when we press next, it just modifies the slide itself instead of creating copies over. And it can do other little things like zoom in, fades in, and what have you.
And this is all just built into Quarto, no extension needed. This is default
Yeah,
behavior. Yeah.
all of it, yeah. And just a few more things. That's little menu, and where you can see the slides. And there's some tools too, which I think is very nice. And you can also see, well, it says what they are, but there's also a little, if you look at the top one, it says full screen, but it's also an F. So if you press F, it full screens as well.
Yeah. My favorite one is E. Like if you're like, I'm
Yes.
looking at this, but I just want to print this out as a PDF, just hit the E key and it will turn into a PDF for you to print out.
Yeah. So if you press S, if you press E, it turns into a scrollable thing, which doesn't seem useful. But if you line it up and try to print it, it prints in how you would expect it to print. So as
Yeah.
long as you're not doing anything crazy or have videos, it now you now have something that you can turn into PDF, where otherwise it's because this is technically a website that is being hosted. This one is being hosted online. You can local host it. as yourself.
Gregory is
Right.
asking, does that PDF export still use Pandoc, or is there an option of exporting via Typst?
So none of this uses Pandoc technically. I'm pretty sure, and I might be wrong, because I'm not that deep in the Quarto, but I'm pretty sure Reveal.js is one of our non-Pandoc paths. So we're just turning something into something that Reveal.js understands. And then Reveal.js does a thing, and then this PDF export mode is just basically fancy CSS that makes it so when you try to print it, everything aligns how you would expect it to align. So I'm pretty
Awesome.
sure it doesn't do it. There's other ways too. I found a way where you can use the Office Libra CLI that can turn things around. So a bunch of different things, but I don't think this. And this also doesn't use Typst, right? Because this is technically an HTML format, like first and foremost.
All right. I'm gonna pause for two quick seconds and ask you if you might change your mic to your
Yes,
laptop.
will
I think
do.
we are having some Bluetooth connectivity issues. If you go down to your audio in Zoom, so if
Oh,
you
soup,
might need
soup,
to
soup.
stop sharing, yeah, in Zoom, go down to audio and a little arrow next to your audio button, and then change your mic at the top to be your laptop. Let's see if that sounds a little bit better.
Wait, I have an audio button? Oh no.
You might need to stop sharing.
Oh, stop sharing. Yeah. All right.
Yep, and at the bottom left, you'll have an audio button. Oh,
Yes, I do.
sorry. Sound
Ah,
engineer Libby is making us stop for 2 seconds. We should have done this beforehand. Everybody, if you use AirPods as your microphone on your Zoom calls, I want you to know that the sound is probably not as good as you think it is.
all right. What about now? Are people
Oh,
happy
so much
now?
better. We have
All
thumbs up
right.
from Gregory. Okay, amazing.
Perfect. Oh, sorry about that. We should have done that before.
We should have. I know, we missed
Yeah.
it.
All
Gregory
right. Yeah.
says it's
So
crispy and clear.
perfect. So everything, as we said, everything is just an HTML format, and Reveal.js is its own thing. And so Quarto is just creating something that Reveal.js understands. All right, so let's see how it actually looks on our end. So, so, so I always like to be on the desktop because, or at least for demos, because I have a lot of different things in here. So you can create actually many things. Let's see. New file. Do we have it? If you're in Positron and have the Quarto extension installed, which I will show in just a little bit. Oh, we don't have. That's just,
So we
oh, we
don't
can
have
view that
like
here.
a slide deck project template, but we can just change our format. Yeah.
Yeah, we can just for now. So if you just do nothing, when we went on save. So the way you normally do it is you have a section and new slide text, and we can do that. All right, so we added. So the way it works is if you have a title, it will show up, and if you do a subtitle, it will show up. I don't really use the title and subtitle because the styling is weird and very like esoteric and specific only to the title slide. So, and if you just remove it, it just go directly to the first uh, section. So you denote each new slide with like a level 2 heading. So there's like the two hashtags. And that denotes a new slide. So we have the text here, we advance over, and we're putting in the plot by itself. There's technically also a level, like level 1. heading that also does something. So that's the idea of technically a section. So here we have our slide, another slide, and then this level 1 heading here is like slightly differently styled to be like down in the middle. And it doesn't really mean much, but it has this like nested idea in it. I don't really think it's that important, but if you, I sometimes use it if you imagine you have a slide that with like 3 parts of like idea, implementation, results. You could have those as level 1 headings to give a little bit of a different vibe and sort things by, but you don't actually do much. Um, there's a million little settings. Uh, and the YAML doesn't always like do what I want it to do.
It
So what
doesn't
I
for
have,
me either.
I know, and that will be improved a little bit later. So if you have Quarto, you probably also have it installed as a CLI tool. So you can use Quarto use template, and then you can put in like a GitHub name of something. So I have a template. So if you use Quarto use template and then Emil Hvitfeldt Quarto reveal JS template, we say I trust myself and I want it as a subdirectory, yes. And we just call it demo. And then we can open it. We don't care about this. So this is a very small demo, or the template I use for all my slides. And it doesn't have a lot, but it has enough of the things I need to remember. So the slides look the same as how they did before, but I added a couple of things I never remember. So I'm setting a different width and height to everything. The aspect ratio is fine in the other one, but if you do any code on slides with a font size big enough that people can read it, I find that this aspect ratio is slightly better. Because otherwise, you can only really put like 40 characters in it before it starts wrapping, and then it's not nice. Um, this page title here is kind of weird because what this actually means is the name of the tab in the browser of this specific page. Because otherwise, I think it's untitled or just index. So if you're giving a talk, you can put the name of the talk here, and then it actually shows up in the browser correctly when other people read it.
I really like
And
that.
and I don't remember what the all after this. I have them here. I don't like code line numbers. So like if you have a code chunk, like oh we don't even. If we set echo to true here, we see that it's not that style that large right here, but the 1+1 is being shown, but it's being shown without the numbers. But if we add the numbers back in, it's just like a little one. I don't really care for that. So I like in my default, I turn it off.
I like this too.
And
This is leads us into Raha's question actually, which is this UI that you're using for slide generation, is this exclusive to Positron?
no, like this should work anywhere really. Like there
Yeah.
is because we're in Positron, we have like some affordances. So like and we have the throttle extension in this. That's why we have the preview button and the render
Hmm.
and save and some little niceties like that. But you can also do everything like this by just throwing.
A lot of this is just that that Positron's UI is just really, really changeable and customizable. So what Emil has is a
Yeah.
side-by-side view where his source is on the left and his like terminal and viewer and everything else is on the right. And he also has render on save on. So every time he makes a change, he's just going back to the viewer and it's listening for his changes constantly. He saves, and then that change is just showing up in the viewer.
Yes. And then the last two things I have in my template is the I already have pre-set up a slide like some very light CSS. and it's already like put into the theme, and I know this is like the syntax I need for it. Another thing is if you do anything where you need JavaScript, you need to put it in under include after body. So I already have just an empty HTML file with a script tag in there. So if I need to add some JavaScript somehow, it's already lined up how it needs to be. And it doesn't hurt right now. So if you use this and don't use that file, it's fine. But I never remember where to put it, if it's include after, before, whatever. So this is just everything I need. All right, so let's. Oh, so one last thing before we move on is there's this idea in, I want to say it's in Pandoc, but it might just be a markdown thing. But this idea of a nest. Oh, no, actually, before we do any of that, let's quickly do extensions. So if you go to the extension marketplace, I'm pretty sure you already have Quarto installed when
That
you
was my
download
question. I
Positron.
was just putting in the Discord. I think it's bundled with Positron.
I know at one point it wasn't, and at one point it was, but I don't know where we are now.
Okay, it
So
might depend on when you install Positron
yes,
then.
but it's easy to install. You just type Quarto, it should pop up fairly high, and then you just press install, and it like reloads, and that gives us a bunch. Well, that gives us all of this. The preview went unsafe. Like that's how all of that has happened, I think, is through the extension. But it also gives us a couple of other little niceties. One of them is this idea of shortcodes, I think it's called. So if I do columns, I get these two little like insert things. So this is a what we call a fenced div in, I want to say Markdown, I did Quarto. So on a slide, we typically want to put things side by side. And since all of this is like HTML, CSS, things that sometimes can be a little bit of like annoying to deal with, we have this built-in thing called columns. So we start with like just like this. This is a div, which is a HTML like container of content. And we add on this syntax here means give it the class name columns. And then this is a nested structure. So inside of it, we're putting two columns in it. And then inside those, and then we put content. So this is a way of us to make sure we have things that happen side by side. You can do with here to be if. Yeah, so you can also set the width, so we can technically put like 5.
I'm glad that you're adding more because Andrew had just asked, is there a maximum number of columns you can have?
So there's technically not like functionally there's not a match, but like visually you're gonna run out of space real fast.
Right, yeah. Visually,
But
it's going to push you
yeah,
off the margins after a little bit.
and this is some CSS that I think is either bundled with Reveal.js itself or something that Quarto added on top. But this is like how we can add a div and we can ship some CSS with it, right? But the exciting part is since all of this is just HTML and CSS, we as the like users of this can do the same things. So in here, so let's just do it easy. So if I do a thing called red, so I'm making a class called CSS class called red, and I'm saying the color should be red. So just create a little CSS class here called red. If I now add that in here, it now turns everything in that one column red, or the text inside that column red. So this is obviously not the best example, but we could imagine that this expands out. of different things. And this is basically how all the slide works in here. So let's look at one extension I know. Oh, no. Let's look at one extension that I made recently that in a way showcases a similar thing to this.
I'm so excited about
So
extensions. If you don't know what an extension is, it's not a
we will show
package. It's a
that
little
too.
bit
Yeah.
different. So Emil's going to talk a little bit about how they differ.
Right. So here's like one extension. So the important thing is we first look in and see how do we install it. And most extensions have an installation link. So we just look in.
And this is a piece of terminal code that you're running. It's not in your R console or your
Yes, and I
Python
will show
console.
a different way to install it to that you can use, but I'm partial to the terminal. So we then say, yes, I trust myself. And then basically this, we would like to continue. And no. So basically it first asks, do you trust this person to download these files? But it's essentially the Quarto add command is a very fancy copy paste. So it looks at the repo and then copy pastes a folder into your working directory. There's a couple of things, so like you can like exclude things, but essentially just copy paste over. And at the end, it also asked, "Hey, do you want to open the documentation?" So, but since I wrote it, I know what happens. So what really happened is it added this underscore extensions folder if it wasn't already there, and then it added this extension called chat bubbles, which we'll see. And it has like some information about what happens, and then it bundles some CSS and some JavaScript. So it's just functionally copied over some CSS and some JavaScript that we can now use. Um, yeah, should we answer some of the questions about
Yes. I was just going to say, do you want
extensions
to
before
pause
we
for a
move on?
second?
Yeah.
Because extensions can kind of be confusing. You're like, this is a weird thing. It's in the terminal. It's not, I'm not calling something. I'm not using library. Um, so let's start with Gregory's question, which is one that I don't exactly know the answer to. Gregory said, I saw in the release notes from Positron 179 that the extensions will default to using the Posit Public Package Manager. Do we know if extensions will still be submitted to the OpenVSX marketplace still?
Yes. So it's a great question. It's a little bit different. So this is a question about VS Code extensions, but we'll still cover it because I'm showing that too. So
Yes.
because names are hard. So we're using extension both to encompass things like the Quarto extension and all these other extensions that you can install on your Positron or VS Code. But we're also using it for these add-ins that you can add to your Quarto projects. So all the Quarto extensions don't go on any marketplace because they're just mostly on GitHub, but you can also have them on a file on disk or whatever. But they don't have anything to do with the OpenVSX marketplace at all.
Correct.
Um,
Okay.
for for Positron, just to like round it up, Positron can only install extensions that are on the OpenVSX marketplace. So if you have an extension and publish it, a VS Code extension and publish it, it by default don't go to the OpenVSX. You need to do that separately. So if you are a Positron, if you want to make an extension that works on Positron, you need to publish both places, which I've done, and it isn't like terribly hard, but it is another set of commands you need to do.
Okay, great. We have one more extension question, and then we have a couple that are about styling. So Hubert asked, are these Quarto extensions global or are they per project? Great question.
Yes. So they were within the project itself, right? So you could have, which is not super recommended, but you could have like multiple projects nested, but that becomes really messy. Um, General, like, so you can have an underscore quarter YAML file, and that like denotes its project, but if it isn't there, it just assumes that it's within the folder you're in. But yeah, all these extensions are just within their folder that they're being used in. And
Okay,
but they're also not that heavy. Like I feel most of them are
right.
fairly small. So it isn't like I
I
wouldn't
find that
worry
they
about
don't
having
bloat your
completely over.
project. Yeah.
No.
And the thing that I have been helping or trying to explain is like since it's not a package and you're not calling it, the version changes aren't as big of a problem. Like you've downloaded this thing that is now sort of static for the most part. I mean, for most extensions, I'm not going to say for all of them.
Yes.
I think there are some more complex ones, but for the most part, you are like downloading assets that then you can use in your project, and you don't have to worry so much about whether or not that GitHub repo that contains that extension that you downloaded at one time changes. It's not as big of a problem. Um,
But
what
yeah,
do you think,
because
Emil?
it's just a copy paste of a
Right.
folder essentially, right? And because one of the problems you can get a little bit if you worry about problems like this is like dependent uh like extensions, which doesn't actually happen in Quarto. Most like people have looked at it a little bit because it is kind of useful sometimes, but basically all Quarto extensions are separate. Like not, like very few of them, if any, install other things. So there's no, it is the version that it is when you download it. There's no compile thing. There's no, oh, let me find the most like recent thing of all the dependencies. Like no, it's whatever is in the repo of the time that you did it.
Yes, it's a snapshot in time, copy paste. Okay, we
Yeah.
had one from Zach that said, when you change those text fonts inside of those columns, could you do it for all the columns at once? Maybe by changing the top div?
Yes. So
You
here,
want to demonstrate that real quick?
yeah. So we can say if we change the red up to now
There
get
you
all of
go.
them, and this is where you need to know like just how CSS works because there is we have like the specificity in here. So if we want to change all of them except the inside one, so we can set the outside one to red, but then one of the inside one to blue, and then the blue wins because it's more specific.
Right.
And
And these are also just variables, right? So like this dot red is a
yeah,
variable that's representing a hex value inside of that dot SCSS file, which stands for
yeah,
sassy CSS. So Emil could go into that SCSS file and he could define blue as whatever hex
yeah. So
code
we
he
can also
wanted
like
to.
change it like oh wait, that might not show that well, but you can just
The darker red, yeah.
yeah. And so you can do a lot of like neat things with that. And honestly, not to turn this into an AI lab, but AI is really good at CSS. So
Yes,
if you're
CSS is a
like,
very well documented thing,
yeah.
which is great.
So
Um, we have one more question if we could get to it really quickly, and then we
yeah,
can move on to showing these amazing extensions because we only have like 25 minutes left.
yeah,
Notobeko had asked, do you also get grid logic like you have with CSS Grid? I don't know anything about CSS Grid.
yeah. We don't, but it's a great idea, and I might look into that. The
Ooh,
problem
nice.
is the way the slides work is the width really easy to define because it's just like from left to right. The height of the slide is really hard to define because, and if I can, I don't want to open it over there. Do I have a? So if we go into, I can't move in this one anymore. Reveal, demo. All right. So if we have, so in this slide, right, you have everything looks nice and you can imagine what the height is. But because of the way the styling is done, we things move around according to the width. So now suddenly, if we wanted to break our slide into a 4x4 grid of values, how do we do it here? Like when does it stop? Like when do we do off the page? So you need to do some annoying math based on what it looks like underneath. So here, technically, this is the slide area of where everything is, but it's kind of hard to fetch in a way where things doesn't just go off the page. So width-based calculations in Reveal.js, really easy. Height-based stuff, hard. But it's not a bad idea, and I might try some of that.
Community-driven development. All right,
Yeah.
let's talk about some of
Yes.
the amazing extensions. So we know what Quarto can do right out of the box, which is a
Yeah.
lot. There are so many things that it would be cool if Quarto could do, and let me tell you, Emil has been making them.
So I'm actually swapping quickly just into auto related VS Code extension. So one of them is just a little one I wrote about things that happen. It does a lot of like neat, mostly autocomplete things. So
Oh my gosh, I
um
love this. Oh my gosh, how did I not know about this?
so like one of them is like there's this thing called the a short code of like the meta tag. So basically anything that's in the YAML you can reuse in the document, but there's no autocomplete in it. So like this extension adds autocomplete on it. It adds if you have a short code, it also like auto-completes on all your short codes. So you don't need to remember all the names. It does. So it just adds a lot of like little things that are kind of nice. Oh, another thing. So here we're adding width and everything, but you can also add like style tags directly. So you can just add CSS inline. The extension adds the autocomplete for that here. So we can say background color and I want it to be like green, which is a bad idea. But and now we messed up something here.
Oh
But
boy, not accessible at all.
but you can add style in line, but it's easy to do now because the Toro extension helper like does that. Another really useful extension is Quarto Wizard, which does a lot of things, which I feel like we don't have time to do, but this is an alternative way of installing extensions. So it has a UI, but why I just wanted to mention it real quick was that I'm tapping into a thing that Quarto Wizard does in my extensions. So I know that I'm adding like new syntax and whatever when I make these extensions. So I did the chat bubbles, right? So here it adds these. So let's just. Oh no, oh, that's not good. This should work. Oh
Oh no,
no, oh no, it doesn't work.
someone forgot to light a candle somewhere.
Oh, yeah. What? Well, I'll fix that. But essentially,
Okay.
what we have is I'm tapping in my extension. I'm tapping in and adding shortcodes to the extension. So you don't necessarily have to remember all the new syntax in all the new extensions because if you have Quarto Wizard installed, all the tab completion, all of that is just like built in a way. Well, let's look at it. We can just find it. We'll just have to do it in the example itself. But yeah, the syntax was like how we saw before. So we do a instead of doing columns and column, we told the bit one chat, and then we either put like a bubble left and bubble right as the inside names. Oh, and here we're also adding fragments so it shows incrementally. And then we put in um like text inside. And now and now it basically looks like we're sending like chats on like a phone. So we can just go forward. And it does this annoying math that no one else want to do, where like when we advance far enough, it pushes things like up and down, which took a while to do. So this is using the exact same idea as the columns and column idea, but now it's just slightly differently formatted. And like you can change different. So this is where like, oh, we are also saying instead of bubble left, we have bubble left 2 and 3 to like the illusion of there's different people talking here. So this is just a little fun thing that isn't useful, but it's essentially just a couple of a JavaScript file that helps push the bubbles up when it detects that we're filling the page too much, and then the CSS to do the rounding and the colors. But now that we have that, we just fill it in like this.
I love
And
this so much. I feel like somebody has to interject here and say how cool this is because we're all silently saying it on Discord and it needs to be on documented on YouTube Live that it's so cool. Raha had said, you said this is a funny little thing that isn't useful. It's very useful. And I feel like everybody who teaches could find a use for this. And anybody who wants to get everybody's attention in a meeting by showing them something that they don't expect to see. This is like a
yeah.
super, super fun thing.
Like another one, which is kind of now I'm just doing a little showcase right now of various different things. So one thing I really think fragments are useful for is for highlighting a word. So or like a sentence, right? So you can if you want to put emphasis or something, obviously you can bold it. And you can bold it as a fragment. So a fragment words, it has 3 stages. So it's before the fragment is being triggered, as the fragment is being triggered, and after. And the simplest form of a fragment just adds different CSS styling to different ones. So that's also how you can make text appear as a fragment because you just say made it invisible before and made it visible after. Um, and you can do a lot with that. But there's also this JavaScript library that's been around for a while called rough notation, which let you add. So basically, the way you where's my basic usage? Yeah. So the way you use it is you have some some text you want to highlight, and then you put on it .rn fragment, so like rough notation fragment. I might have maybe should have used like a different syntax for this, but basically you do that, and then when you extend, you have this like highlighter thing, so like it like pretends to paint over it, but it also has like other modes, but it has this like handwritten feel to it, so it adds a
Very
little bit of
cool.
noise in it, and you can just add all of that in here
And this
in
is, since it's a fragment, it's like an extra step in your slides. Like it doesn't show,
yes,
and then you hit the next on your slide, and it's sort of an animation that it's highlighting and underlining, right?
yeah. So
Okay.
and it's just a way of like just emphasizing a thing that happens, and there's like a bunch of different types that you can do, and you can change the colors, and there's a bunch of different arguments to it. So you can change color and
What?
whatever, and all of them just happen with like the inline. So oh no, so this doesn't work here because, but basically the
Emil,
I'm
can you see all the reaction emojis that are happening in Zoom?
no, they're not popping
I
out
don't
for
know
me.
if you can. They're all like, we're mind blown.
And I spent some time like trying to make it as usable as possible. So you can set colors in different ways and whatever. And like so this oh, and one thing to the long time to work, it also so there's a different extension. So this is not my extension. So this is this, yeah. So this extension right here solves another problem that is if you have code. So you can add fragments and styling to text itself, but it's really hard to do it in the code chunks that happen because of various reasons. That's not really hard to do. So Flourish is an extension that allows you to make fragments happen on your code itself. And I was able
On
to
the
like
code
line it
itself, like
up.
in code chunks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we have a code chunk, but let's say we want to highlight a word here. We can obviously highlight the word up here, but we can also like, this was just a box around ggplot2 or like ggplot. So we can use the Flourish syntax with the rough notation if they're both installed at the same time. Like it will note, hey, I'm seeing both, and then like there's a thing around it. So you can also do the rough notation in code chunks, which before wasn't like a thing because I'm doing things weirdly to make things happen here. All right, let's um um
This is so cool. I wanted to ask the rough notation is
yes.
like a JavaScript library on its own, right?
Yeah, so this is
That
I'm
you're
just bundling it
leveraging.
in. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm technically bundling in uh something that happened in a branch because I wanted the animation to also work in reverse.
Right.
And the
Okay.
project is basically abandoned. But someone did a PR to make animations happen in reverse, and I'm stealing that too. Well, with attribution, but it's happening. One
Okay, cool.
thing that I'm like actively working on right now, but also is public, is let's go into this sample slide. And no, so one of the issues when you're writing slides is that you might think, oh, I kind of don't like the image here is fine, but I want to move it just a little bit. And the normal approach to do that is here I set it with absolute. So adding this absolute class to basically anything, but really with images, you're specifying the position with like left, right, top, and bottom, and you specify the widths, and it moves around. But let's say I kind of want this to be a little bit more to the right. You can go in here and change it to like be like 10 pixels to the left. And then you render and it moves over a little bit, or maybe a little more. And you do like 20, and it moves over just a little bit by little bit, right? But this can just take a while to do. And so where this extension comes in, you install the editable extension the way you would all the other ones, and you add like little things to the YAML. Sometimes you need to add things. Oh, that's probably why the chat thing didn't work. Because I didn't finish installation. But you need to add it as probably a filter in the YAML to activate it. But all of that is on the README, so if you follow the README, it should just work. But if you have the editable extension installed, you will see that in the slide area, there's also a little bit of a menu at the top. So if you click on the modify, oh, this is looking kind of weird, but essentially clicking on the modify, I can click on a thing like this text field over here, and I can move it like a little bit around. I can Oh, so that doesn't work yet. Shoot. If we add another text field down here and modify it, I can say like, hello, data science lab. And I want data science to be purple, right? But I'm also moving the image around a little bit. So it'll be over
This is
here.
amazing.
This is like a
Anybody
bad idea, right?
anybody who has not worked in Quarto slides, you might not realize that clicking and dragging things like this in like a visual editor mode is not possible. This is completely only made possible by Emil's extension.
So it's still like a little slow because so as you saw, like you modify some things, you click save, and then it you find where it isn't overrided. You can also like copy it and like paste it in, but then hopefully it's still very work in progress with some of these new things. Oh, so the image disappeared. So oh, it we lost it somehow. But it basically like move things around. How like and like when it releases, it like doesn't have these issues. But basically allows you to modify things on the slide side of
Yes.
and
And this
then you
is a work in progress version that Emil is using. So
yeah, like this should work in like the ones you download should work.
yeah.
But I'm adding a lot of basically the modify button doesn't work yet. So the way you have to do things before was you put an editable class to something. So you have to specify in the source document, hey, I want editable on this image. And then we can modify it over. If you hold shift, it like understands like the ratios. You can set like a opacity or like flip things around. And then when we save it, it overwrites. It updates over here. So now when we re-render it, now it's no longer editable, but it remembered everything we did. And
And
like
Andrew says this is magic.
so this will get better over time, like surely by slowly. Um, it will be faster for many things. And it's just there's a lot of like it's a lot of code to make this happen because I'm technically parsing the order document in JavaScript with regular expressions, which you shouldn't do. But that will be it with the Quarto 2, which if that can be linked somewhere. Um, they're rewriting Quarto in Rust from the ground up, and that is improving speeds a lot. And this, once we have that with this, then suddenly we have a much faster feedback loop. But the problem is here's a slide, it's one slide, right? It doesn't take any time. But the re-render still takes a couple of seconds depending on how long your slides are. So having like modifying something, pressing preview, then modifying it on the right hand side, clicking save, and then having to wait for the render again. Like even if it takes a couple of seconds, that becomes like quite a slow loop where the new render is so much faster. So it will feel like instantaneously once we have it set up with Quarto 2.
Amazing. Okay, well, so we have 5 to 6 minutes left.
Yes.
We have a couple of questions that we could get to. And also, is there any other extension that you are burning to show us that's very cool? Or should we go to questions?
Yeah. Oh, that's
Think of the Maya one.
yeah, so this is yeah, so we technically have so this is slightly different than like extensions. It was called a theme. So and then you install it. So here is like the Quarto use template and then the like the VLJ async to the Mayo. Um, it also copies a bunch of things, but it is this like Cinco de Mayo theme that like I was working on. So it's just like it's fun and happy.
I think
And
the concept of
it
this translates really well into just like you can create themes for slide decks if you want
and
to.
and like and we might want to talk about more of that later in the future if people are interested. But because this is
Yeah.
a because a lot of the hard work with like setting up slides that can be like the first time, and if you're doing it in a corporate setting, you don't want all your people to redo all this work all the time. So you can have one person or like a group of people make your team theme and then make it into a Quarto theme, and then people just have to import it once. It copies all the things over, and then you just fill in content. You don't have to worry about, oh, are the colors correct? Are the sizing right? And you can do little neat things like here. So, like, I I called this a slide theme. So basically, for each slide, I have like a theme dash and then like a name, so like title one, title two, section, and whatever. And obviously, they're all like similar in vibe of like fonts and colors and sizes. But also, this one, I know that, hey, we have like some flourish here on the right-hand side of the slide. So we are constraining everything to be the left-hand side. So like you can have like just nice little things like this that just, yeah, but highly
Beautiful.
recommended. And then this is just a copy paste. Like this, if you use this, it just copies over this template file that just kind of has like all the things, the CSS file, and yeah, so it's very light in what it actually does.
Very cool. Okay. Well, we have a poll going in Discord asking, do we want Emil to come back and talk about slide themes so that we can deep dive into it? And so far, it is exclusively yes votes and it's climbing. So I think
Fine.
that Emil might be at the top of the leaderboard very soon for repeat data science lab leaders. We have a couple of questions. One is from Raha, and she was asking if there is a Quarto extension that can help dynamically create tabs or chunks. And this might be something that Raha needs to like explain herself, but she says, say I'm working on a Quarto report and I want to create a series of tabs, but the name and the number of the tabs is not something I know in advance, and I figure it out in the report based on my data. So I basically write code to write the code and render it so it looks like tabs and chunks, but it's messy and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Um,
She did put an example of her code, by the way, which is like looping over um, and creating the right number for the right number of variables that she's got.
yeah, so I'll have to look at that and I can get back into the because this
Okay.
is Discord, right?
Yes, in Discord.
Yeah. So I'll loop around and see. And my first instinct is like so you can so since everything here is like based on HTML, there's this like HTML tools package that you can use to help like put things in, and you just have to make sure styling works with it. So, but yeah, I think I'll be better helped by just looking at the example and the more precise feedback here.
Okay, great. Raha, we will continue talking about this. Maybe it doesn't exist yet, but maybe it could exist. And then Andrew had asked about seeing some slides at a conference and seeing that they were highlighting code chunks. So certain sections of the code were more prominent or emphasized. And I wanted to let everybody know that that is actually a default capability in Quarto is code
Yes.
highlighting. So you can make it so that your code chunks have highlighting in them.
Yeah.
There
So
we
we
go.
have
This is a
that
great
here with
example.
the code highlighting, like code line numbers. You pass in a range. You can also do like if you pass in a range, it here says like 6 to 8. It highlights line 6 to 8. Well, it doesn't highlight it. It just actually hides everything else by like
Yes.
fading it out. If you comma separate them, you can like it's not a list. If you do the vertical bar, it basically turns into fragments by like first not highlighting anything, then highlighting 6, then highlighting 9. So yeah, this is a default thing that we can do in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's more
very,
types
very
of
handy.
highlighting. So yeah, go take a look at the Quarto documentation to look at all the different types of highlighting. It's very cool. Okay, we have reached the top of the hour. Colin had a question that's in the Discord about getting clarity on how to embed a revealed JS site into another Quarto document. Colin, we will hop in the Discord and help with that.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Emil, for hanging
Well,
out with
thank
us,
you for
teaching
having
us
me.
so much.
Amazing.
Yes. We're all clapping. Camera on clue is clapping. You're getting tons of reactions and thank yous in Discord. We will find a time for you to come back and talk to us about creating themes for
All
Slido
right.
reveal, not Slido, slides using reveal.js. Slido is something different. Okay, everybody, this was so much fun. I'll see you in Discord with more questions. Thank you for voting in our polls. And I will see you on Thursday at the Data Science Hangout, perhaps. Thank you for hanging out with us, everybody.